Calipers are the answer to your Finissimo questions. So look, the first thing we should talk about to knock this off, because there's two purposes for this video. The first purpose is to tell you a little bit more about this silver dial iteration, which is new, and also to really get into the specs and how this watch wears using our trusty calipers to get to the bottom of why this watch is such a surprise to people when they go to try it on. Sometimes it's a good surprise, other times it is a genuine surprise of, oh, I did not expect this. Let's try and get into that. Firstly though, this lovely brushed silver dial, very attractive. It's actually, geek note, it is actually the designer of the watch, Fabrizio Buonamassa Stigliani's favorite version of the Octo Finissimo, and that's because for him it completes this utter fireworks display of finishings on the wrist. They are different in the way that they work with this steel motif. On the chronograph, we have much chunkier indices, and we have a very large 12 applied, which has a very coarse vertical satin brushing, which means that in certain lights, it catches and really flicks from a dark to a bright silver. So that's a cool little trick. On the time only, the numerals are much more slender, and of course the indexes are very slender. It's in every way a more svelte watch. And we have, of course, that small seconds without a frame at 7, just working away there, giving you some activity on the dial. Now let's get into the all-important fit and feel. When we talk about the time-only watch, we have a 40mm watch, according to the specs. However, that is measuring the watch from case side to case side, and we're getting exactly 40mm there. When we add the crown, we're talking about 43mm, but really this is a proper 40mm watch from side to side. However, from lug to lug, and again, I'm gonna go from where the bracelet drops off, we have a 48.4mm lug to lug, which again, to me, fits well and truly under that 50mm size where things start to overhang many wrists. So there's no issues here in terms of how this watch actually translates from the specs to the wrist. The unusual part is, of course, one of the main selling points of the Finissimo, which is this thinness. This is a 6.6mm thin watch. So when you translate all of that onto the wrist, you really do get a feel that is like no other. It is a completely flat case back, and it is so slender on the wrist that it can be quite a shock to someone that's never worn a watch like this before. Beyond that, I don't think there's anything particularly misleading about the way those numbers translate, but you do have to try this very slim, very cold feeling, very flat case back on the wrist to see if that's something that you're going to want to wear every day. Now, the chronograph. This is where I think the numbers really do tell a little bit of a lie. We have a 43mm watch in terms of its diameter, but that leaves out the pushers. And considering the integrated chronograph pushers are such a part of the case, it almost really looks like a crown guard when you look at these pushers from a distance. So I feel like to truly give the diameter of this watch, we have to measure from the outer side of the pushers. And then of course, over here, we have the GMT hand pusher, which allows you to change your away time, and then you can have your home time in this subdial here. So this pusher again is a significant, I'd say it's about 30% of that case side is taken by this pusher that activates the hour hand. So when we measure this case, including the chronograph pushers and the GMT hand pusher, we come in at around about 47mm. And then when we measure the lug to lug of this watch, we get to 53.7mm. So really we have 53.7mm by 47mm. This watch is a very large proposition. Add to those numbers a 9.2mm case height, which again delivers on that Finissimo slimness, and you have a totally unique proposition that does not correlate with the numbers you will see in those specs sheets. So really the best demonstration is to look at this watch on my wrist. As I said, a 7-inch wrist. I think it's probably the most average wrist size you could get. This is a really large, in charge Bulgari Finissimo that to me is a very distant relative of the original essential DNA, which is the time-only model. So which Finissimo is for you? It really comes down to that question of the very substantial difference in heft between the chronograph and the time-only. In terms of the overall proposition for both models, they're quite similar. The time-only has a 60-hour power reserve and 100 meters water resistance, making it a proper steel sports watch. It deserves to have that title. The chronograph has a 55-hour power reserve and also has that 100 meters water resistance. So they're both stunning watches. They've been an absolute game changer for Bulgari, but this is a video we had to make. We've made so many videos about the Finissimo. I feel like we've been talking about it since it first launched all those years ago, before it had 7 consecutive world records smashed year after year after year. It's been an amazing run for the Finissimo. The one outstanding video is now done. How is this going to fit on your wrist? And the hidden truth about the chronograph version, which again, on paper is such a value proposition. Not only do we have that chronograph, we have a second time zone, and we only have roughly 6,000 Australian dollars difference in price. The time only is 19,100. And the chronograph is $26,100. That's in Australian dollars, so don't freak out if you're in America. It's going to be a little bit less. Thanks for watching. I'm glad we had this conversation. Any other questions about the Finissimo, ask in the comments. You know that we answer them.